On today's show, it is part 2 of 2 and a deep dive into Trae Young with my good friend Glen Willis of ATL and 29, and it's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you here in early October. And today's podcast will be part 2 of 2 with myself and Glen Willis talking about Trae Young. If you missed it in the past, we've been talking about the player capsules about this Hawks roster all summer long. And this is the final installment. If you missed part 1, by the way, start with that one. It's available right now on the same podcast feed. Once you listen to that, come back for part 2. And without any more delay, we'll dive in right now with myself and Glen talking about Trae Young. So, Glenn, let's go to the shooting efficiency, which is certainly a hot button topic. And I'll just lay out some stats and we'll react to them. Because look, the number one efficiency metric that I like to use as a score, and the scoring efficiency, and anyway, is true shooting. Because I think getting to the free throw line matters. The way you shoot there matters. Trae's obviously good at that, and encompasses all of that stuff. But he had his worst true shooting percentage last year since he was a rookie. And as a rookie, he was a good rookie, but he was still a 19-year-old rookie. It was 56.7% true shooting, which is still not bad for a guard. Like, that's still totally fine. It's about league average for every player, and guards generally have lower true shooting than bigs. So that's, keep that in mind. But I think we mentioned this on a previous podcast. Trae from floater range is just the same every year. It's hilarious. Like, he shot 46% from floater range last year, which is good. It's a good number. Every year of his career, it's been between 45 and 47% from floater range. That's just what he's going to do. He's good at the shot, takes a lot of them. So put that to the side. That's just kind of a given. He shot 34% from 3, which isn't horrible, but certainly is below his career baseline. And then the big one for me, and the big one, because 3-point rate, that's probably like within his norm. It's below his norm, but still. The big one is his finishing at the rim last year. It was 53% at the rim, according to Cleaning the Glass. His worst rate since he was a rookie, and a number that you don't like. Even as a small guard, that's not particularly good at the rim. So there's number one, are you afraid of the efficiency drop? That's number one. Number two is, how much do you attribute that to his surrounding situation? Because throughout the season, we talked about this during the season too on different discussions, I was pretty vocal in saying, look, this is a challenging context for a small guard in particular. You're playing without much spacing. They were spacing deficient for a large portion of the season.
Yep.
And also, as we've discussed already, even on this conversation, him being the only guy that really scared defenses for most of the year, especially post-Jalen injury.
Sure.
Which that means attention. So lack of spacing, you're driving into packed paints, all those things. And I was not going to give him a pass on all of it, but I thought it was a point that had to be kind of acknowledged to say, hey, why would your efficiency be down? Part of that's you, but part of that's also like, hey, it might be worth considering the situation he's in. What do you think about that?
I think the situation was a big part of it. There's a few things that we can break down, and I'll try to be efficient with it. Little
very nice.
Pun accidental, I guess. But for me, like last year, especially before the trade deadline, and Niang made it a little better for Trae. Like, right?
Yep, for sure.
Man, like we said, way outshot his normal 3-point baseline that was there. Ricochet got better as a 3-point shooter down the second half of the season. Dyson was a more consistent, even though the volume wasn't there. And Yeka was making above the break 3. So they got a little better. But for me, like last year, up until the trade deadline, especially when Clint was still playing, again, big fans of Clint Capella here, but was not exactly what they needed on offense last year as they were trying to shift the offensive scheme and philosophy. But what I felt like I saw a lot last year were opposing teams inviting Trae to attack a seam, inviting Trae to get into a seam, and then closing on him with big defenders, closing on him with length, and Trae maybe not necessarily having somewhere to go, or maybe someone, Dyson was great kind of cutting behind a defender, kind of, helping on to Trae on a drive and those things. But I felt like what a lot of was happening with the lack of shooting on the floor for the Hawks was just teams shoving Trae a seam and be like, hey, Trae, take the seam, And once he got there, obviously he's not the biggest guy in the world, doesn't have the length to kind of finish around defenders and all those sorts of things. And I feel like that was a lot of it. Now, I don't know, if some fan wants to be like, he could have adjusted, he could have taken a 12-foot floater more often, or this or that, whatever. I'm not going to sit here and like overly unreasonably kind of judge Trae's decision making kind of in that sense and stuff like that. But for me, I felt like teams were really inviting him into tough space for him to navigate and manage for his size. And that because the Hawks didn't have enough shooting to put on the floor, that was a thing that was, especially out of the top 10, 12 defenses in the league, were like, come into this space. And then they just collapse on him, and he doesn't have the length to kind of work out of what he had. I think that for me, if I had to attribute to one thing, that's something we saw over and over and over and over and over. And they just didn't really have the shooting to stress the defense to not do that, take that kind of approach with him.
It's not only a Trae thing, but I'm big on the concept of gravity and how, and that's one reason I've banged the table at times over the last several seasons when the Hawks, in my mind, didn't have enough shooting, is because it impacts everything. It's not just 3-point shooting, accuracy, it's everything. Like it's driving lanes, it's especially for look, and you could say this is a knock on Trae, that's fine, but especially when your best player and your primary ball handler is a 6'1" guard, he needs space. Like that's the thing. And again, if you view that as a knock on him, that's fine. But just realistically, he needs to operate with more space than some other guys do. Also, you noted Niang, Man, etc. From February 1st on, which is around when those trades happened, his true shooting was 58.2%.
Yeah,
which is not a huge jump, but it's a 1.5, 2 points higher than it was before. Not a coincidence to me. Now, we've discussed the percentages, the situation. There also was the injury. And I know people, because they got fined by the league, it was like, oh, Trae's not hurt. He was never hurt. Well, I can tell you with 100% certainty, Trae was not 100% physically for a large portion of last season.
Yeah, the speed to change direction, you saw that.
You could see it. Yeah, I mean, beyond the intel part of it, which I did have, like, you could see it. He was not his normal explosive self. Now, it's maybe fair to at least say out loud, like, hey, he's a small guard. He's getting older. I don't think he's quite the same athlete that he was at 19, which is pretty normal when you have this much wear and tear. I also don't think that his burst that he didn't have midseason last year is the norm moving forward. I think with a healthy offseason, he's going to be, even by the end of the year, he was looking a little bit more springy than he was earlier in the season when he got a little bit more. So that's part of this too, is that maybe you don't never know how much it is, but when you're limited and the situation's not great. So fast forward, we could go on that forever. I believe, and I want to know what you think, I believe the combination of health, even variance, and also the situation, I think there's a rebound coming in his efficiency this year. Do I think he's going to suddenly be a 65% true shooting guy? Like, no, I don't think that's going to happen for him. Right. But he has had seasons where he was in that like 59, 60 range. And that's doable for me. Like I would project him. I don't know what number I put on it. Maybe I'll decide right now. 58, 59 would be probably what I would guess it's going to be this year. Yeah. Do you agree with the general premise? Like all things equal now, assuming health that he is right now, situation, I think it's going to get better. What do you agree with me? This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually help you get paid. Don't miss the excitement of football season right now with PrizePicks, where it is good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun and simple way to add more excitement to your football this year. Just pick more or less on simple player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards, Saquon Barkley's rushing yards for touchdowns, etc., and you're in the game. One thing I really love about PrizePicks is actually how quick and easy it actually is. You can make a lineup right now in less than a minute, and it's very, very user-friendly. Also, you enjoy using the stacks feature that PrizePicks just added. If you want to go ahead and rise up with a player, you can select their passing yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. It's also fun to follow other players in the app, copy lineups with one click if you want to, and they have a new injury reboot feature that you actually have to check out. If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't actually count against you. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA and get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks. That code is LOCKEDONNBA in the PrizePicks app, $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup is played. PrizePicks, it's good to be right.
the number one part of that is Kristaps, really, really just creating a ton of space, right?
Yep.
Kristaps getting the other center out of the lane, right? That's like value number one there, right? And the other part of that to me is just that, I think if you ask Trae, it's like Trae would rather be creating easy shots for teammates. Now when the opposing defense is like just taking everything else away, Trae's like, okay, I got to score 35 for us to go win this game. And it might be on 11 of 28, 12 free throw or whatever, but he takes the assignment, and will go try to deliver the points that are needed there. But I do think the space, like Nicole Alexander-Walker is a good catch and shoot guy, right? Really good catch and shoot guy. Risha Shea got great at that across the last season. Dyson got more consistent, even though still on low volume. Onyeka added above the break three. So now they have two centers that can presumably. I still don't know how much we talked about Onyeka. I still don't know how much other teams really respect Onyeka above the 3-point
break. Probably not a ton yet, but hey, more than
for sure. Kristaps
for sure. And right. Also, even if they don't respect him fully, the versatility on Onyeka can he can make a play with the ball in his hands. Like
for sure,
they're playing. This is a different podcast, but the fact that the Hawks are essentially putting out what amounts to 5-out spacing for every minute of the game. There is not a guy, unless they get down to the N'Faly Dante, Charles Bassey injury issue, their top 11, 12, 13 guys, they're playing entirely 5-out spacing at all times.
Yeah, and N'Faly is a good finisher, right? That's like, I don't know, 70% of his offensive value, we'll say. Bassey is a good screener and is just a pro in the, he's not going to score a ton for you, and all those sorts of things, but he's a pro in the sense that he knows how to operate in this funk. Now, you hope that's a tertiary kind of contingency, for most games of the season.
That would be the hope. Yeah.
But it's not like those guys don't have some streaks that they can lean into. But I think his efficiency is going to go up. I think the other part that if I could have 30 seconds with Quinn, the one question I would ask him is Quinn, how do you feel about that 28-foot pull-up three with 18 on the shot clock? And part of last year was there were no other shooters, so teams just sunk into the paint. And Trae was like, if I take 4 or 5 of these, maybe I'm getting them up the floor. And, for me, I feel a little amateurish, kind of questioning what's Trae's mental approach there. I think Trae would kind of laugh me off this podcast in a sense. Because Trae knows what he's doing. But there are times that I know fans react to that, was that really kind of what we needed on that possession or whatever? And I think the other part was you talk about the minutes he played, but you get down to 4 minutes left in the game, and he's played 34, 35 minutes. There's fatigue there, and that's a factor. The depth they have this coming season should allow them to maybe keep him a little fresher across the game, and maybe he has more energy to kind of work that possession in the game that he didn't have last year. He has more help in that sense. But I don't know. Trae's made a ton of game winners in his career to this date, right? A ton. Last year, I didn't always love what they were running, but I also you're like, well, Glenn, what should they have run? I'm like, well, they didn't have a lot of other options.
Right.
The Trae, it's funny, the back and forth on Twitter was you'll get a Trae ISO and you'll like it. It's like, we got a 6'1" guard who's going to have a second defender run at him.
It's not great. I think you and I are on the same page with that. I think the Hawks have done that too often with Trae. Yeah. As much as this has been a very pro, I don't think that Trae is the best, isolation one-on-one with the game on the line guy. He can do it. He has done it. Yeah. But the limitations of his size do manifest in those moments. Sometimes.
And NBA coaches on the other team, they're like, at 6, we're going to send a second defender, or whatever time they decide we're going to send a second defender. And Trae has one pass to make, and it has to be to the right guy in the right spot for them a shot, or it's not going to be there. And there were no other, especially once Jalen got hurt, there was no one else who could make a play before there's no one, literally no one. Yeah. So I don't want to be critical of Trae in that situation. I think he tried to kind of do what he could, but I'm hoping this year it'll be different at end of game. But it'd be interesting to see, hey, Quinn, do you feel like you have more options this year for end of game than the prior years? And those things be interesting to hear, not as a trap question at all, but I'm literally curious, what his explanation would be if he would give a 25% explanation or 50% or whatever it might be. But I think that's a thing to kind of watch for this year as well, in that sense. But for me, I think he just has the right pieces. The pieces around him this season just fit way more. Efficiency goes up. His scoring might go down a little because he has more guys who can score the basketball. on this roster. There's more play. Like Yucca's a good play finisher. Jalen's a great play finisher. There's more in transition, all that sort of stuff. So his points per game might go down, but his assists might go up one more time because this is going to be a pretty potent offensive team.
I think his scoring might stay where it is, but also with better efficiency, which means he's taking fewer shots, if that makes sense. Like I think he's probably going to take fewer shots, or not more shots. I don't think, no matter what. I have 2 more hobby horses to get in, and then we're going long, but that's my fault, so we can keep going. One of them,
like nearly 7 minutes, So.
Yeah, it won't be long. One of them is that Trae did lead the league in turnovers last year, and by lead league I mean had the most. I don't want to dismiss that. So at the time, I always say this: I think that's overblown as a problem because what we already talked about, like he has the ball so much. I also think it'd be nice if he cut him down a little. Like both can be fair at the same time. So there's that one, and the other one is that he is a consistent free throw drawer. And there was this legislation a couple of years ago that changed some of the stuff, and everyone was like, "Oh, he'll stop getting in the line now." Well, he didn't stop getting in the line. He still gets to the line about 8 times a game, and when you shoot 88% from the line, that is a massive, massive thing. And every year, people are in my mentions like, "Well, what do you shoot from the field tonight?" And I say, "I don't care. I don't care." I mean, obviously it matters, but like if you're ignoring 3-point shooting and free throw shooting and your efficiency calculations, you're just doing it wrong. And I can't help you with that. So those are my 2 things I want to at least throw out there. The turnover thing though, do you think is it a problem? Do you think of it as a massive problem that Trae turns the ball over a lot?
I think it hurt them sometimes last year, but I also think they just didn't have enough ball handling on the roster. And so like I don't know, it felt like it all fell. So again, to me, like do you give him a pass? Like there were times at the end of a game where he's trying to create a shot for himself. Oh, second defender comes, not a pet. But to me, I don't know. I trust Trae with the basketball like all the time. I trust him with the basketball all the time. But Dyson came along as a handler. Kennard's going to be I think Kennard's going to be on it in the game offensive possessions a lot. Take that pressure off of him. Kristaps having the length to pass over defenders to kind of create a passing angle for him. And Yucca's and Jalen are both advanced passers for their position. And so I hope that the collective set of an uplift of ball handling skill across positions 1 through 5 and collective passing ability 1 through 5, I think will help him kind of cut those things down. I felt like last year he felt like he had to do a lot by himself. And I just hope that he is going into the season, with the perspective, and I imagine he is like, oh my God, I have way more help this year. And I hope that that's the thing that helps him take the biggest step towards cutting down turnovers, which would be helpful.
Yeah, I think we're aligned there. I did this riff during the season or after the season about how if you look at like the all-time turnover list, it's a bunch of superstar players. Yeah. And if you look at every season turnover list, it's a bunch of superstar players.
Harden and LeBron's had his shows up there.
And I'm not dismissing it. We just agreed. He did turn them all over too much last year. It was the most he's ever been in his career. I think it will probably regress a little bit in a good way, but I just want to throw that out there and at least acknowledge that it happened. Yeah. Offensively, like, look, we don't have to put a number on it. I think Trae is, a top 10 to 15 offensive player in the league. Yeah. Like, if you want to knock his defense, we'll talk about that in a second. Obviously, that does hurt his value. Even if I think it's overstated sometimes, it obviously hurts him. That will never change, I don't think. But offensively, like, you could say, if you want to tell me Trae is like the number 6 offensive player in the league, I would not think you were crazy. I really wouldn't.
Yeah. I'm not going to go to the bar and have an argument with some drunk guy over his 5th
right.
or 9th.
I mean, there are a few guys where I'd be like, yeah, I mean, obviously I think Jokic is better. Like, cool. Like we'll establish that. But like, there's only a handful of guys that I wouldn't at least have the argument about. Yeah. And that kind of puts Trae in a pretty strong light offensively. He's got to put a pin in this. Efficiency wise, like hopefully it would be nice if his efficiency came up this year. I think it will. We think it will. But no, I enjoy watching him play offensive basketball. I do. Yeah. And I think it's actually more enjoyable now than it used to be with the way that they've run it's just more intellectually stimulating the way they play offense now under Quinn. Is that fair?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's not like the same play 11 straight possessions. It's the other team made a sub, so we're going to switch to this action to put that, the 4th worst or 2nd worst defender on the floor into this, or the worst defender into that, or whatever. I mean, that's where people don't talk about Quinn having like, a lot of brilliance kind of around that. Just recognize like how do we put their weakest defender into our action? How do we try to do that and stuff? And it's something they'll try to do, but they'll have more capability to do that this year than they did last year by a lot.
Yeah, and this is not the Quinn Snyder capsule, but Quinn around the league is generally regarded as one of the guys who has the best stuff. And what I mean by stuff, I mean like just the stuff that he can put in and actions and ATOs and all the stuff that the stuff that Glenn's better at analyzing than I am. Quinn is known for that, and I think having Trae to like put it into practice is helpful for a head coach that can get a lot of things done.
Yeah,
I do want to talk defense a little bit. Glenn, this will be short compared to other guys because we all know the deal with Trae to some extent. What do you think of this premise? I believe Trae has kind of steadily improved his defense. I also think that it's still not good. I also think that he gets targeted a lot. In fact, second Spectrum has this number where Trae was the player in the entire league who was put in the most pick and rolls defensively of the whole league. That means teams are going at you on purpose. So when I say all that, like I've already let it leak earlier in this podcast that I think the caricature of Trae's defense and how impactful it is way, way, way overstated. I also think he is an active negative on defense a lot of the time. And that's what you kind of have to live with because he's so good on offense. We spend a lot of time on that. I think it is fair to say his defense is a problem for team building, and it's just one of those things. The NFL season is here. FanDuel has an offer that you absolutely do not want to miss. And right now, if you are a new customer with FanDuel, bet just $5, you get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. That's right. Pick a bet right now. Put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. FanDuel is great in so many different ways. One reason is that it actually fits how you like to bet on sports, whether it's player props, parlays, same game parlays perhaps, straight bets, whether it's point spreads, over-unders, money lines, etc. They have futures, even live betting as the action unfolds. It makes watching football or basketball or baseball even more exciting when you have a little bit something extra riding on the action. They have all sports you can think of across the board, football to the NBA, of course, we talk about all the time on this podcast. Plus, they have baseball, they have hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, both domestic leagues, international leagues, etc. They have F1, they have NASCAR, boxing, MMA, and so much more. Whether you're a casual fan or just someone who loves loving the stats, perhaps, FanDuel makes it the whole gambling experience so much better for you. FanDuel is quick, it's easy, and they are fast to pay out when you win. It's the best possible way to add a little bit more energy to your game days. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Download the FanDuel app and get started today. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system that you have heard me talk about in the past, just with a new name, and here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps everything connected 24/7. Quo is the number one business phone system that streamlines communications in the customer realm. It works right through the app on your phone or your computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline in your own life. I love that Quo, formerly known as Open Phone, lets your team share one number and collaborate on calls and texts like a shared inbox, so no customer gets left hanging or behind. We built an AI agent that's also a game changer for you. It can answer calls after hours, capture leads, and even get your business keeping moving when you're off the clock your own self. Whether you're a solo operator juggling everything at the same time or part of a larger team, Quo makes everything really easy for you to stay responsive and professional. So why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnba. That's QUO.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over for you at actually no charge whatsoever. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers.
I think there's a fair thing to ask. For me, I ask myself, like, what is it fair to expect of him?
Yep.
Considering his size, right? That's number one there. And for me, I'll do a quick walkthrough. There's multiple layers to that. Like, one is you don't want Trae taking fouls because you need him on the court. Right.
True.
Right. Number two is, can he keep himself from getting screened onto the ball handler? Right. There's a technique to that. But if the other guy, the primary defender on the ball handler, is not doing his job to keep Trae clean, then it takes both players. They're navigating that action to keep Trae off of getting switched onto the ball. And then, kind of the third thing is, I'm low man. Can I get someone to come get me out of low, right? Because he's the last guy you want to have in that situation. And Trae for me, his awareness has gone way up. No, he's not going to wake up tomorrow and be 6'5" or 6'6". That's never going to happen.
Or even 6'3".
Yeah. Yeah. But for me, I think he's done a better job recognizing like the things I can do to contribute to a more successful defensive position is not get switched onto the ball handler, not get stuck as low man, like not be, oh, I'm low man and now I got a 6'11" center, I got to go try to fight for a rebound. Just recognizing when he's in trouble, asking for help, communicating that, all that sort of stuff. And I think he's gotten better and better and better at that. But to expect him to be an impact defender across the whole game is unrealistic to me. Right now, that said, I think Ansi has done a ton to get more credible high-end defenders on this roster coming into the season, that there should be more help for him on the court at all times to keep him out of bad spots. Last year, it's like I'm watching like he and Garrison Matthews on the floor at the same time. I'm like, well, who's going to go get Trae out of low man? Like if it's Garrison, and Garrison would try to take a charge, all that stuff. But, when he's on with Dyson, when he's on with Nicole Alexander-Walker, when he's on with Zachary Risho, when he's on with Jalen, when he's on with Chris Stapps, I think there's just, we can kind of go on and on. When he's on with Veet, Veet's not the biggest guy, in that sense as well. Veet has some processing too, but Veet has his own defensive limitations. We've talked about that on his episode.
Yep.
But for me, I just think there are more high-level defenders to recognize Trae's in a bad spot, someone go get him out of that bad spot, or Trae being like, I'm in a bad spot, and that's what it is. But the other thing I will say is that I think one thing Trae did across the season, I don't want to guess number of games, but there were 4, 5, 6, 7 games where he made a play in the last minute and a half of a game on defense. So he ramps up his intensity and his like, okay, now I've got to step it up. Okay, and they won, I don't know, 3 or 4 games last year because of a play he made in the last minute and a half of the game. Yep. And so now you can't ask him to do that all 36 minutes he's on the floor. You're going to exhaust this guy, right? There's no way. But I think he does a great job of recognizing, like, okay, it's now it's a fair. Another question, Brad, is next season is he even on the floor for those possessions if it's coming out of a timeout.
If it's defense only, then no, he won't.
Right.
No. Exactly.
But they won, I guess 4 or 5 games last year that they don't win because of a defensive play he made towards the end of the game where he was just like, I'm going to fight. I'm going to be physical. I'm going to do what I can. And it's a little, I don't know, you look back at it, the replay, it's a little comical to see him going down and taking the ball away from a 6'5" guy who's trying to take the rim or whatever it might be and stuff. But you can't say he shies away from those moments where it's like, my team needs more of me defensively on this possession than they ask of me the rest of this game. And he goes in there and he makes the effort, right?
Yep.
You hope now going forward, like I said, you hope when Trae's on the floor, you know what teams are going to do a lot? Not call a timeout. Right.
Yeah. They want to go at it.
Right. They're going to not call a timeout. And so you have to have a plan for that. And you have to be prepared for that. Right. But I think his situational awareness improved by, 20 or 30% last year. And I think that he's going to have more capable defenders on the floor to keep him out of bad spots. So do I expect him to become like a league average, no, that's not something but do I think he's going to have more resources to keep him out of trouble, keep him out of bad spots, all those sorts of things. And that's what the Warriors asked for of Steph Curry for a long. It took him about 5 years, but he became very good at not getting switched onto the ball handler, right? He became very, very good at that. But Steph Trae's a hard worker, no doubt about that. I mean, that has a reputation, right? Steph also very, very hard worker and technique, discipline, and stuff. But for me, I think there's just a lot more there that's going to help him this year than like, oh, I'm on with Garrison Matthews and Georges Niang, like, what is my solution on this possession? But I appreciate this still. Again, I think we have to put our expectations in the right place and be honest about what he does offer as a defender, and I think we're doing that. But I also think there are times when he's like, okay, this is a possession where I really have to apply myself and try to make a play. And then he did a little bit more defensive playmaking on critical positions last year. And I think he deserves credit for that. Do I think he can do that? Do I think he can do that 50, 60, 70 times? No, that's not what I think. But I think you respect the effort. And that's really all you can ask of him.
Yeah, and you bring up the point about expectations, and you know that I'm big on that, like being realistic about what guys can and can't do. What I do think, and my theory of the case has been the last year or two, I would say, about Trae and moving forward, is that the idea used to be 5 years ago, consensus used to be you just cannot build a defense around with Trae Young in it. You just can't do it. They're going to be terrible forever, right? We've now seen that that's not true.
Yep.
Now, what you do have to be cognizant of is that, yeah, in a high-level situation, he needs to be probably your only problem on defense, like your only guy. Which is why him and Kennard minutes, I'm already worried about it right now. But anyway, put that to the side. And there's a little bit of massaging of data here, but it's kind of proves my theory of the case that you can build. I don't know about an elite defense, but you could build a good NBA defense with Trae Young on your team. I believe that to be true if you are intentional about it everywhere else on your roster.
Mm-hmm.
Last season, the Hawks were pretty solidly above the league average in defensive rating with Trae on the floor, as long as you did not have David Roddy or George Niang on the court with him.
Yeah.
Trae on, Roddy and Niang off. The Hawks were like 60th percentile in defense. Now that's not incredible, but that right there tells you in a decent size sample size that you can build a good NBA defense with Trae Young.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're even better than that with Trae off the court. Like
yeah.
I do think last year, this is worth acknowledging, they were like capital G good in the non-Trae minutes defensively. Now they were terrible on offense, but they were good enough defensively. So if you throw those things together, like I believe this is more of a big picture take. I think this is a team this season that has, I'm not going to predict this probably, but like this could be like a top 10 defense this year with Trae on the team.
Yeah, I agree. Now that a lot of that was Dyson's impact. Dyson had a ridiculous impact.
Of course.
A lot of that was, I don't think Hawks fans recognize how much Inyaka improved the last 30, 40 games of the year defensively. He improved a ton.
Yep.
Talked about it as the rebounding there. And to do that without Jalen is like, it was more impressive. Terrence Mann would step up and play the 4 for you, even though it wasn't ideal, but he would work hard and fight, and those kinds of things. But for me, it's like, I think Trae does realize all this processing I have on offense, I should be able to know what I'm seeing a guard want to do with the basketball and to use my own baseline of knowledge for my own offensive approach to jump in passing lane, to get a deflection, and I thought he did a good amount of that last year to recognize that. But I also think that with the offensive workload, you have to, again, if you will, like in the first, second quarter, you're like, man, Trae's just kind of like, you don't want Trae to get into foul trouble. You don't want to get him to bad spots. Now, in a close game as the third, fourth quarter ramp up, I think we consistently saw Trae get more invested and realize, okay, I've got to contribute defensively, without expecting him to do it the whole game. And so that's where I think it just takes Hawks fans, I don't know if the word is having some grace or having some perspective or whatever it is around the right and fair thing to expect to him across the whole game. But there were times you saw more defensive playmaking, kind of say from him and him leaning into areas where he can have an impact as a defender. And I think his teammates are okay with that. I think his coaches are okay with that. The roster context this coming season, way better. Be interesting to see how that manifests itself and those sorts of things. But I think for someone to go, he doesn't care. I think that's really unfair.
Yeah,
I think it's more of lineup context, rotation context, situational context, etc.
Yeah, and I think that what I want to put out there is this is not a Trae only phenomenon. Obviously, he gets discussed like he's like an outlier or whatever, but like name your small guard, like Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland or some of these, Tyrese Halliburton, quite honestly.
Jalen Brunson.
Jalen Brunson's a great example. Like they all have similar challenges defensively. They all don't ramp it up all the time defensively because you just can't when you have this much usage. Yeah. I don't believe there's a meaningful gap defensively between Trae and Darius Garland or Trae and Jalen Brunson. Like I mean, maybe those guys are slightly better, but I don't really think there's a huge difference there. But they don't for whatever reason, they don't have the stigma attached to their defense in the way that Trae's is for whatever reason. Yeah. But it is what it is. But I think that all those things that you just talked about, and they're all good points, they apply to a lot of like star level guards. That's just the nature of the business. That's the nature of the beast. Yeah. Before we get out of here,
on the other end, you have like a Davion Mitchell who is all defense and the offense
that's his role.
Is gravy, So there's a spectrum, of where guys are falling there.
Yeah, and stars in general. I mean, most stars, even guys who've got reputations, like Kobe's a famous example of this. Kobe had this reputation where he's making all defensive teams, and he wasn't playing at that level on a regular basis. By the middle of his career, he wasn't doing that anymore. But it was, he could ramp it up though and show it.
He was picking the spots. Yeah.
All right. Before we get out of here, we're not going to do a whole deep dive on the contract because that's not what you're here for, Glenn. I've done it before. I'll do it again on my end. I do want to ask you what you think about the situation, knowing that, again, that's not really your beat, is the extension beat, but he is eligible for the extension, has not signed it yet. There is no deadline. Keep that in mind. Like, this is the situation, not like Dyson, where there's a hard and fast deadline. Trae could go into the season. They could sign it any day during the season. But do you have an opinion on the extension, no extension stuff on your side of things?
Well, I mean, I do. So first caveat, I haven't memorized the CBA.
I got some stuff in front of me if you need.
Okay, all right. I'm familiar with the basic outline of how these things work, but I don't want to pretend to be an expert. I mean, I'm more of an X's and O's.
Not your beat, yes.
Right. But from what I'll say is, number one is I think Trae is allowed to think he's worth whatever he feels like he's worth.
I actually agree with you on that.
I think he's allowed that. But the second thing I'll say is that this new CBA, first apron, second apron, makes it way harder to take a guy. What would you argue? Like, oh, if you're not a top 10 guy, can I give you like a full boat max?
The 30% max is
yeah, because all of a sudden, like, well, how do I put a quality team around you if that's what I do? You go look at like some of the contracts that kind of went out, the Shea contract and the whatever contract's going to kind of look at. And for me, it's like, but I mean, the Trae can decide, no, I want the full max. But there are, and it's interesting with the Kawhi storyline. And it feels like, with the, these other ways of compensating him and stuff like that. And I think, I don't want to dig into it, but like there's a little curious, like, is there a lot more of that going around in the league? Or owners like, oh no, we're kind of doing some of that. I have no idea. But for me, I think it starts with, I think Trae deserves to think he's worth whatever he feels like he's worth. He's awesome. He's phenomenal. He's played hard through some mediocre rosters and seasons the last whatever number of years. But on the flip side of things, I think a front office has to be like, this is the math. This is the math. And if we want to bring Kristaps Porzingis back next season, do we want to, whatever it might be, do we want to bring Luke Kennard back, next season, or whenever, all those sorts of things. And the math is the math. And that second apron is a real thing. You do a sign and trade and you are capped right at that second apron. There's other kind of maneuvers and stuff too. And so I do think you would hope, I think as a Hawks fan, there's a middle ground where they realize, like, okay, Trae, we're trying to recognize your value. We're also trying to leave cap space to build a team around you that can accomplish, being a contender, building up towards that, giving our young guys space towards that. And so that's as far as I'll take my perspective, is like, hopefully there's a middle ground that they can kind of work out, but I don't begrudge Trae feeling like he's worth whatever he feels like he's worth. I think that star players generally feel that way. And that's probably as far as I could probably provide.
No, it's a great point. And I made that point too a couple times, in that, this season, he's a max player. Like, Trae's worth that much money. Yeah. It's not about that. It's about years and the fact, what's it going to be at 30, 31 as a small guard. And it also is about exactly what you just laid out. It's about the CBA and realizing, while Ansi would never put it this way in public forum, he knows who he works for. And until we see Tony Ressler break out the checkbook, you can't plan on being a second apron team in Atlanta. There is no evidence of that being willingness on the ownership side. Maybe that will happen at some point, but we haven't seen it yet. So trying to build the team responsibly. But yeah, it's really always really interesting for players to, like, how much do guys want to listen to the realities of a situation? Like, because Trae is, on one hand, Trae is worth the max. Yeah. On the other, like, is he going to understand the new dynamics where you said at the very beginning of this conversation, and people say that this is not a new thing that we're bringing up, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, anybody in Trae's level was just going to get they just got the max. That's just what happens. Automatic. It's an automax. And Trae's seen that. He's a student of the game. Yeah. Like, so he's probably thinking, what the heck? Like, what? But the game changed kind of at a bad time for Trae, contractually. But look, the numbers are huge. He'll get paid a lot of money. I'm not worried. And I will do another breakdown, I promise, probably on my own between now and the season. Yeah. but I wanted to at least get your perspective because look, it's not the Trae extension capsule.
Yeah.
It's not what we talk about, but it is obviously a looming storyline. So I had to ask you, but I think your points are very valid, and we'll see what happens. And look, I think already, again, we'll record this before media day. Maybe he'll say to some media day that will raise eyebrows, but Trae's been in town working out with guys. I've heard that. They've talked about it already. The guys were in town, the pickleball thing that he did.
Yeah.
It's not like people were like, well, is this going to be a distraction? And all signs point to no on that.
Agreed.
I think Trae's going to show up and play and be dialed in. And if that's a concern of yours, I wouldn't have it be a concern. And I think Ansi, as someone who I'm not known that long, I think Ansi has emotional intelligence. I think Ansi will navigate the situation with emotional intelligence and not insult Trae and not blow it up, while also maybe drawing a line and saying, look, Trae, this is the deal. We love you.
Yeah.
Ansi said very positive things about Trae on Friday as we were talking about this at his press conference. Yeah. But anyway, it's a storyline. It's a storyline until it's not. Like until he signs the deal, it's going to just be out there forever.
Yeah.
But
I get it. Last 45 seconds of saying this is all the reporters out there, like Tim McMahon, he's a pro, right? He works hard. He's a grinder. As far as I know, I don't know why he would have any intel on what's happening with Trae in Atlanta. I don't want to say he doesn't because I don't know him, but there are these guys who, as far as I know, have no real kind of connection or comms with the front office that are reporting on. I think the word he used was murky, right? I would tell Hawks fans, ignore all that. I mean, truly ignore all that. Last year, Trae was fully bought into everything they were doing. He bought into the young guys getting reps. He stepped into the greatest leadership season of his career, in my view. Now, the contract is a different thing. That's a fair thing. It's a different thing, and we'll see what happens there. But I think Trae loves playing for Quinn. His words support that, and I think that he's kind of bought into where they're going. But the contract. The next contract doesn't get executed until it gets executed. And if there are Hawks fans who are feeling a little anxiety about that, I get it. If they're like, wow, this feels uncomfortable, or I don't know what's going on here, I get it. That's just how these things work sometimes. My hope is they find a middle ground that respects what Trae's contribution and value to the organization is, while also leaving room to continue building a good roster around him. But we won't know until we see what happens.
We will not know until we see what happens. Glenn, thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing all of these player capsule episodes. This was one where, I swear to you, we could have gone for 2 hours.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you got to try to self-edit a little bit. I'm bad at that, but it is what it is. Before we sign off, where can folks who might have found this podcast and hopefully all the other ones as well find more of Glen Willis?
Yeah, it's ATL and 29. Like when we get to the preseason, which is right around the corner, we'll be spinning that back up. We might do a post meet. I think we'll do on ATL 29 post media day when that happens. Kevin does a great job of just putting the audio back out there, just like you do for your Patreon and your podcast and all that sort of stuff. So check that out. I can't wait to get Tyler's reaction to the first 1 to 2 kind of preseason games. I love the energy he brings to our pod. He's awesome, and I love him to death. And then my Patreon's still out there, kind of getting caught up on some content over there. As I always say, they're the Hawks corner of the content creation is just getting bigger and bigger and more prolific. So go support people that are grinding and putting in time and effort and those things. Because there are people that are just getting started but work really hard, and are learning all the time and asking for help and perspective and stuff like that.
For sure.
So I want to see a community where we support everybody, and that's way more important to me than someone supporting me directly.
Thank you, Glenn. I very much appreciate it. Check out Glenn's work. If you are a Hawks fan, I could not recommend it more, even if you just like basketball in general. Follow Glenn, Patreon, Twitter, Blue Sky, ATL 29. I'm an every show listener. I always say that, but I am. I laugh sometimes. I chuckle sometimes. I make notes sometimes. It's all there for you, everybody. Yeah. As for everybody else, please subscribe to this podcast, Locked on Hawks, anywhere you get your podcasts. We'll have much more to come in the very near future, so stay tuned, and we'll see you all next time.